Good morning. Let's get to the Bible study manuals. Look at John chapter 1 verse 14. The difference between John the Baptist being born as a human being and Jesus Christ, the Son of God, adding to himself humanity. John, letter J, John 14, 1:14. So we go to John chapter 1. Scroll down in the table of contents to 14. Now here's the verse. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the one and only from the Father, full of grace and truth. So the Word, eternal, creator, the life, the light of men, is already established up to this point in the context of John chapter 1. God added to him his essence, perfect humanity, and dwelt among men, so that all men throughout history, including the future, through witness accounts beginning with John the Baptist, might have the opportunity to recognize, know, and believe in him unto an eternal life relationship with God. Promised in the Hebrew Bible, fulfilled here in the Greek, in the New Testament. King James Version, take a look at it. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. So the verb was made in the phrase, and the Word was made flesh, is the rendering of the King James Version translators for the Greek verb egenito in John 1:14. With this rendering, the verse could be mistakenly interpreted to mean that the Word was created in the flesh, beginning his existence as human, or that the Word entered, indwelt, filled a man, or that God's words were created into flesh to represent him, despite the fact that it has already been stipulated, in the beginning of creation was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. But egenito is the aorist tense form of the Greek infinitive verb ginomai, which means, in the context of John 1:14, to come into being or to become. So it is best rendered, the Word became flesh, not the Word was made flesh, in John 1:14. Note that the Greek word sarx, which literally means flesh, is not rendering to sinful flesh in the Greek phrase, referring to sinful flesh in the Greek phrase, rendered and the Word became flesh in the New King James Version. It refers to perfect sinless humanity as was originally created by the Word, John 1:3, becoming an essence of the Word because of who he is. He's perfect, sinless, eternal creator God, the life, the light of men, as established in the first 13 verses before this. This implies that the Word did not previously have a permanent existence or essence of humanity. Furthermore, the absence of the definite article with sarx stresses the quality of humanity to be added to the Word, as opposed to being changed, transformed from creator, eternal God, to finite created man. God is immutable. He can't do that. So the Word becoming flesh is not the same as a caterpillar becoming or being transformed into a butterfly, where it no longer is a caterpillar. Since God is eternal and the Word is God, then the Word cannot cease to exist as God. So the verb form egenito conveys the concept that the Word became flesh in the sense of newly adding the quality of perfect humanity to himself. For example, just as an individual can become a police officer as an additional expression of his being without losing being a civilian, wherein sometimes he expresses himself as a civilian off duty and other times as an officer of the law on duty, so the Word became flesh, human, as an additional expression without sin, of his being without losing, being eternal, uncreated, pre-existent God, wherein at times he chooses to express himself in his finite humanity and at other times as eternal, uncreated, pre-existent God. That's a mouthful, but master this. Lots of religious people deny that. Now, compare John 1:4 and 6-11. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. There came into being a man, having been sent from God, whose name is John. Man came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all through him, the light of men, the life, the word, might believe. That one was not the light, but that he might testify about the light. The true light that gives light to every man was coming into the world, and the world he was, and the world through him was made, and the world did not know him. See? So he came to his own, he came to all things of his own, being creator, all things of the world, being inanimate and animate, including mankind, and his own, masculine and plural, those animate objects who have the capacity to receive and believe in him, his own particular people, specifically the people of Israel, did not receive him. So we have a background there building up to this verse 14. We go on further. Just as verse 4 indicates that the Word was the light of men, implying that the Word was actually providing revelation to mankind about himself, and just as verse 9 indicates that the true light that gives light to every man was coming into the world, and just as verse 10 stipulates that the Word was in the world, and just as verse 11 indicates that the Word came into the world to his own, all things of the world, both animate and inanimate, including mankind, and his own, those animate objects who have the capacity to believe in him, his own particular people, specifically Israelites. So verse 14 stipulates that the Word became flesh, added perfect humanity to his essence, and in this manner came into the world at the time of John the Baptist, so that he indeed was able to be perceived as the light of men and be received by the world, that all men throughout history, including the future, through witness accounts, beginning with John the Baptist, might believe in him in order to have eternal life relationship with God. So the Word, having added perfect humanity to his essence, made his indwelling among us, literally tented or tabernacled among all mankind, primarily exercising his essence of finite, created, perfect humanity, yet at the same time being infinite, uncreated, pre-existent, eternal God. That is something to behold, to think about. So, author John and others experienced seeing the glory of God in the Word, in his perfect humanity, the one and only who came from the Father. So hence we have verse 14 indicating that. Look at the Greek here. And the Word became flesh, became and tabernacled among us, and we beheld the glory, his glory, as of one and only the Father, full of grace and truth. So the Word became flesh, added to himself perfect humanity, and in that humanity he is one and only from the Father, implying a unique sonship with the Father. With explanation of this in the grammar, one and only instead of the only begotten. And I have dictionary backup of that. Now, in point D, both the Father and the Word, the Son of God, are in view as individual personalities and modes of expression of God. The Word became flesh, i.e. added perfect humanity to his essence, which came from the sovereignty of the Father. So far in John chapter 1, verses 1 to 14, we have two personalities, two modes of expression of God in view. Verse 1 has the Word, who was with God and was God, two persons who are God. More is said of the Word in verses 1 through 14, that all things came into being through him, that in him was life, temporal and eternal, and that the life, the Word, was the light, the illumination, revelation of truth about God to all men, and that through him all might believe to receive an eternal life relationship with God. That the Word became flesh and dwelt among men and manifested the glory of God to men as one and only, as the one and only from the Father, full of grace and truth. The word Father in verse 14 is used to portray the mode of expression, the personality of God, the glory of whom was beheld by author John and others in the Word in his perfect humanity. Hence, one of the persons of God is described as Petros, rendered Father in the New King James Version, God the Father, which leaves the Word as God the Son. Hence, references in the text to God can be determined to be God the Father. Notice that the Greek word Petros in John 1:14 is without the definite article, which conveys an intimacy, a familiarity on the part of John and those with him, as if they are his children, which all believers are. So, the Word is full of grace, the grace of salvation, and the whole of the grace of God, because he is God, the Son of God. The word grace is defined as unmerited favor or undeserved blessing. Grace is the principle upon which life from God comes, both temporal and eternal, and the Word is God who gave life to all living things. Furthermore, there is nothing of merit that one has an opportunity to express in order to be born in temporal or eternal life. Grace, therefore, is the principle by which the Word created and sustains all things and provides an eternal life familial relationship with God. You can read some more here. Time is of the essence. Point F. The Word, creator of all things, God, became flesh, added to himself perfect humanity, and came into the world full of truth, the truth of who God is, of his creation and life, and the truth that he is, because he has made himself to be the sole means by which an individual can be born of God as a child of God unto eternal life, familial relationship with God by grace, through a moment of faith alone, in his name alone. There's a lot in this one little verse.